Hey everyone, this is Ellie Mae with Silhouette Secrets Plus, and today we are going to unbox the Cameo 5, set it up, and I'm going to share my first cuts using HTV with this new black Cameo 5. Now, I want to say that black has never been my favorite color in Silhouette machines. I actually don't care for colors whatsoever. A white machine is the same as a black machine is the same as a pink machine to me, except when it comes to troubleshooting and looking at photos with users. That is where it is more difficult to troubleshoot with a Cameo 5 black. However, once I got the look of this black Cameo 5, it's pretty sleek. So I'm kind of glad it was the first one available, and that's why I have it. Otherwise, I probably would have ended up with white, and maybe my mind wouldn't have been changed. We are going to unbox this. I'm going to quickly go through that, and we'll share some tips and tricks for getting started with your new machine. So let's get started. So there are a ton of unboxings that happen when anytime a new machine is released. So I decided to just quickly unbox everything. Part of the longest process of unboxing a machine is actually getting those little twisty ties off and all the little squeaky from the styrofoam. So we're just going to speed past that. The biggest thing is make sure you do not throw anything away that is in the package. Make sure you unpack everything. There is a little bag with your AutoBlade and an adjustment tool. Do not throw that adjustment tool away. It's very handy. Make sure you're getting all of the packing material, including that one on the back, out of your machine. There's lots of little pieces that is designed to protect the machine in transit from the manufacturer. So make sure that you are getting all of that. When you go to remove the tape from your housing, be very, very careful. You do not want to rip it off like a Band-Aid. You want to hold that housing in place as you're doing so. We see a lot of issues where people just tear through the packaging material, and that's not a good thing. Okay, the Cameo 5 is unboxed. You do want to make sure and double check that there is no additional packing materials anywhere in the machine. Double check that before you get started. If you don't, it's going to make a terrible racket when you get it going and turn that power on. So you just want to make sure that everything is out of there for your best success. Now, let's take a closer look, and I'll point out a few of these new features on the Cameo 5. So let's start with the first, the new lid design. If you just carefully lift that up, it's going to slide back on its own. It has a new designed touchscreen. We'll take a look at that as soon as I power it on. You have your tool housing 1 and you have tool housing 2, which now has the ability to have a powered tool housing. That is what the top here is. I would highly recommend that you keep your machine clean. If you get debris inside of that area where it is the powered option, that could affect your power tools and the ability for them to function properly. So the best thing that you can do is keep, when not in use, you can keep the lid closed on your machine to keep any dirt and debris out of there. It is always a great recommendation to keep your machine clean and to not have any spray adhesives or debris or paint or anything that splatters around your machine for your best success. There is a new design on these rollers, which is pretty cool. This is a new roller bar. The roller bar does not move. It is a stationary roller bar, and the left roller is stationary. It does not move. However, you have a new right roller, which if you lift up on this lever, you can slide this easily. If you push it a little bit harder, it locks, and then it slides even more easily. Now on this is very difficult to get on video, so I will try to get a close-up here. You have these new sections on your roller bar that have these little divots in them. As you slide this roller across, you're going to feel it settle into those divots. You can lock this right roller in any location that has those divots. You are going to hit a certain point here where it cannot go any farther. So you want to have it locked in those divots in order to have it secure. So I'm going to slide this over. When you are using a cutting mat, you always want your right roller and your left roller on the edges of your cutting mat. You do not want the rollers rolling across the adhesive, or it can pick up residue, which can affect your future cuts. The new design on these rollers is going to make it even more difficult to clean them, so I would highly suggest that you keep them clean. You can flip this down to lock it in place, and it's much easier when your housing is out of the way. So your housing is generally over on this side. I'm going to secure it in the lock here, and you also have, it's very hard to see as well, little divots in the back here that designate where that roller can be locked as well. Little guides. On this new roller bar, you're going to see textured grip areas on the bottom. That is going to be the locations where that roller is securely locked in place. So if you have it outside of that area, it's going to be on the smooth part, and it will not feed your materials correctly or your mat. It does make a difference where that roller is placed. So I'm going to place it out here on the farthest designation for using with a cutting mat for right now. Then you have these spring guides in the middle. Now on the back side here, you can see there's actually a spring, and they are guides. They are not rollers. They do not provide pressure down like this roller on either side. They are simply a guide to help keep your materials from bubbling up in the middle. And we can talk more about that later. They should be evenly spaced between the two rollers for your best results. Now I am going to, while we're close up here, I'm going to show the installation of the AutoBlade. This is one of the top cutting issues, and it is very prevalent since 2016 when the Cameo 3 was released, but it is a concern for all model machines. If your blade is not installed correctly, even with a slight gap, or the lock is not secured, you will have cutting issues. So you're going to pull out the front of this lock. You're going to carefully just slide the blade into place. It does have the automatic tool detection on the back. Again, another reason to keep your machines clean. You're going to press down on the tool and lift carefully up on the front of the tool housing. Then you're going to push the lock in to secure it. The hooks on the front of the lock will grab that blade. Now I am going to place my housing over here. Again, I don't have my roller completely locked in place. I'm going to push my housing over to the right side, and when we get started, it's going to automatically set to the proper location on the left. So let's go ahead and get set up for the first cut. Okay, now that we've taken a closer look at the Cameo 5 and some of the new features on it, let's go ahead and get this hooked up. I've grabbed my computer. You will need to use a software version of 4.5.735. There is additional information in the description below this video, and I will update it as we go along. An older software version will not recognize the newer machine models of the Cameo 5, Portrait 4, or Curio 2. So you will need to update in order to connect to this machine. Now, I do want to explain a couple things. I'm going to show you how to do a small cut because we can now move that roller down even smaller to the 5-inch mark. We're going to test that in this first cuts video. I will not be using the cutting mat, but if you are a beginner and this is your first cuts, I highly recommend you use the cutting mat for your first cuts. You do not want to do your test cuts and cut completely through the material into your machine on those first few cuts. So I would highly recommend using the cutting mat if you're going to do that. Here is the included roll feeder. I will have additional videos on that when using a larger roll of HTV or adhesive vinyl. I'm just going to set that aside for right now. You do have a little baggie that the AutoBlade was in. You want to keep this little tool. It is the tool that you can use to unscrew the bottom of your blade and check for debris. And then we have our power cords. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to power this up. I've already connected one part of the cord, but you want to make sure to connect securely the center of your power cord to the power bank. And then we're going to go ahead and we're going to plug this in. On the right hand side is where you're going to plug in to the new Cameo 5. There is also your plug adapter, your USB port, and your power button. Now, the new machines do not come with a USB cord, and that is for a very specific reason. Computers these days all vary, and USB ports are not always in the computer. So Just like printers and all other equipment, the USB cord is no longer included in the box. You either have one in your stash or you can order a basic printer cord that you could direct connect to. So we're going to go ahead and have the software recognize the new Cameo 5, and it will have to update the firmware the very first time you connect it. Now, firmware is the hardwired program on the actual Cameo machine. Since the release of the Cameo 4 models, it is all automatically done in the software, and it will notify you when you have a firmware update. I will show you exactly where that is and what you need to do. So the first thing I did was I just grabbed a scrap piece of heat transfer vinyl. This is the new Caesar Easy Glow, and we are going to test it out with this new design of the rollers. So now the rollers can go down to 5 inches or a little bit underneath that. You're going to have to test to see what will hold your material securely. So let's go ahead and power on this machine. And I want to point out that when you power this machine on, it's not a quick power button because there's a new feature. So you're going to hold the power button down for 2 to 3 seconds. This is going to power up. Your touch screen is going to light up with all the buttons. And let's take a look at what those new buttons are. Bluetooth is up in the top right corner. It is currently flashing. That is what is going to be recognized on my computer. It is not lit up right now, but you do have the new option to repeat job. It was highly requested and they brought it back. So you do have a repeat job on this, and you have currently your load and unload buttons. So we will take a look at that closer as we load our material. It's going to give us a few different options. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to jump over into the Silhouette Studio software, and we're going to have the machine recognized and update the firmware. When the firmware is updated, your machine is going to turn off and turn back on. So I learned the hard way. I'm not going to load my material yet. So let's pop over into the Silhouette Studio software. Okay, so I was playing around with the software yesterday. I have not connected this. You saw it come right out of the box. This is my first connection to the Cameo 5. So I need to go up to the top right corner. And again, you will need to use a software version of 4.5.735 found on the Silhouette website. Links in the description below for more information and that direct link. I'm going to click on send. And then previously I had a Curio 2 connected. I'm going to click on this little machine icon in the bottom right corner that has the red number on it. That is your machines list. I'm going to click on that, and then it is going to show me by Bluetooth that I have a Cameo 5. It does currently say unknown. Don't worry about that. I have a link in the description below on a YouTube video why I explain that. It is okay. Just click on it. It will be recognized. So I'm going to click on that. It's going to switch to my machine, and it's going to start the connection. So it currently says connected. It is checking for firmware, and it automatically clicks in that it needs a firmware update. You have to click update now for it to start, and usually it only takes a few seconds, maybe a minute at the most. It does depend on your internet connection. It has to connect to the internet, and we'll see how long this is. I'm far from my router, so we'll see how long it takes for me to connect, but it's usually within a minute or two. You do not want to switch off your Cameo 5 or any machine when the firmware update is connecting. Okay, so it is still looking for that. So to me, that means something didn't go correctly, which is okay. It's all new. That's okay. I grabbed a USB cord from my previous machine. It's still not picking it up. And you know what? Things like this happen. So if it does not go through smoothly with the Bluetooth option, a lot of things can interfere, and there are a lot of factors there because it has to go through your internet and your Bluetooth connections and all kinds of things, different computers, different things. So it's not a problem. This way I can show you how to connect it with the USB cord. So grab a USB cable, and I'm going to plug it in to the right side of the machine. And in this case, I'm actually going to power this off. I need to take out the power plug and turn it so I can insert the USB cable. And now we should have no problem there. So USB cable. And again, to me, it's not a big deal. I'm going to connect it to this. If your computer doesn't have a USB port, you're going to need to have adapters for other equipment as well down the road or in the future. So I just connect it by the USB cable. Oh, and then I'm going to plug it in, and then I'm going to power it on. Because it was taking so long and the firmware update did not complete fully, I was okay with powering my machine off. If it is still processing, you do not want to turn the machine off. But I waited long enough that I was confident it was okay. I'm plugging it in by the USB cord. It was immediately recognized, asked me if I want to make this my active machine. I'm going to choose yes. And then it's going to tell me again that I have a firmware update available. That automatically tells me that it did not go through correctly. And there's a number of reasons why that can happen. It's okay. I'm connected by USB. We're going to do it direct connection. I'm going to choose update now. And then I'm going to wait. And in most cases, this is going to be faster than if I use the Bluetooth. Now, faster. It was automatic. Automatically, I could hear that. It's going to shut the machine off, and then it's going to power it back on. Firmware is complete, and it's going to be recognized in my software. I am not going to edit that out of the video. I am cutting out the little wait times because you don't need to see me looking at my computer. However, this is going to happen to users whether you're doing it for the first time with your firmware or it's down the road. We deal with it in troubleshooting all the time. Grab a USB cable, plug it in, direct connection, and it was actually faster. That could have been because I'm away from my router in my recording area, or it could be for a number of other reasons. It's okay. It's done. Finished, fixed. We're on our way. So it currently tells me there is no media loaded, which is exactly right. I'm going to take my new piece of vinyl, and I could use this two ways. I could cut it the long way and place it in my machine, or now, which is what I'm going to test, we can now go down to 5 inches. So I grabbed a ruler right here, and I measured this before I even started. This piece of scrap glow, Caesar Easy Week glow, is 5 inches. So we're going to test this out. Okay, so I told you that we were going to try to test the 5-inch width in the new roller placement. In the process of doing that, I found a bug. I have to report that bug, which I have done, but this isn't going to be a successful project, so I am going to scrap that until it is fixed in the software. And things like this happen. It's new software. Luckily, I can report that, and they can hopefully get that addressed quicker. So what I'm going to do is I am going to show this with the new Caesar Glow on the cutting mat. So we are going to grab that cutting mat. And it's always on videos that things happen the most. I'm just going to roll with it, and that's what it is in this video. So it is real life. Things happen, and not all videos or not all projects go 100% perfect. So let's just show that, show the real life of it. So what we're going to do is we're going to set this up for cutting with the cutting mat. That means you get to see me adjust the rollers again. So I am simply going to lift the top of this over, and I'm going to slide this along to the farthest point. The farthest point on this should be the 12-inch cutting mat. The way to test that is to hold the mat up to the load line on the left side, and you want your roller on the very edge of your material. So you can simply place that white roller on the edge of the material. Again, I strongly caution that you do not have your rollers on the adhesive of the cutting mat because it can affect your feed. It can affect the debris being picked up on the rollers, which will cause you future cut issues. They are also going to be much more difficult to clean because they are located underneath. Not impossible, but just more difficult. You do not want to place the roller on top of your cutting mat. I'm going to remove my protective blue sheet and carefully, and I'm going to save this. It is a new sticky mat. So what I generally do, and you may or may not do this, I'm going to de-stick it just a little bit. Clean cotton t-shirt, kind of like seasoning your cast iron skillets. And then I'm going to simply place this material, and now that I'm using a cutting mat, I can cut it either way. So I'm actually going to cut this a little bit bigger, and I'm going to place it in the top left corner of my cutting mat. Now, once we have the material on our cutting mat, we're going to pop over into the software, and I need to tell it now that I'm using a cutting mat because I previously tried to set it up with no mat. Having that designation in the software does affect how the machine loads. Okay, so now that I'm in the software, you can see on my screen, I had previously tried to send this as a no mat job, and I'll just show real quickly. I was trying to send a 5-inch width by 8.5-inch width, and it's not showing accurately on the screen. It was not going to successfully cut the way that I wanted to show. So I'm going to report that. We'll hopefully get that fixed in the orientation so that you're able to utilize that feature. I'm going to move on and I'm going to roll with this. So we're going to change it to a cutting mat, so automatic Cameo. And then what I want to show you here is, I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You have to tell the machine that you are set up for either using a cutting mat, which will show on your screen. And what you're going to see here is that the margins on a cutting mat are more than the margins when you're using no mat. It is very, very specific. So whatever you tell the software, that's exactly what your Cameo machine or portrait machine is going to do. So if you told it that you aren't cutting with a mat, but you really are, it's going to start cutting at the top of your mat. If I tell this that I'm using a mat, but I'm not, it's going to go down about 1 inch, and then it's going to start cutting. So it's not a miscommunication. It is how you've told the software you are set up. So I am currently telling the software, now that I've changed my orientation, I need to change this to 8.5 by 5 inches. And then I'm going to grab a design from my library, and I'm going to place that on my media. I'm going to fill this with color so you can see it a little bit easier. And then I can just center this to my media since that's what the size I'm going to be cutting. And I'm going to right click and choose flip horizontally. And then it is going to cut the HTV in the exact location that I have shown on my screen. Because I have a smaller media size and I've told it that it's a smaller media size, it would work either way. I'm going to come up here to the Send tab, and then I have created my own custom setting for this Caesar Glow because I was previously cutting it on a Cameo 4. So I'm going to select that setting, and this is what I used before. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to send a test cut. Now, you can use the test cut that's in the software. That's okay. It's down here in the bottom right corner, but I'm going to create my own test cut. So I'm going to click Design. I'm going to come over here and grab the text tool. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to type a capital B. Now, I like to use the capital B, and I'm going to place it in an area that is a negative space on my material. I use this capital B because it has straight lines, corners, and curves. So it's going to give me a good idea of how my design, which also has different corners, curves in it, how it's going to cut. So I'm actually going to change this line color, and I'm going to designate it as blue. And then I'm going to use a little trick here. So on the Send tab, I have Caesar Glow as my material. I'm going to choose Line, and I'm going to uncheck the red. So it's not going to cut the red color, but it is going to cut the blue. So I'm going to click on blue. I'm going to double check my settings, and then I'm going to load my material, and we're going to do this test cut. So let's pop back over here, grab my cutting mat. I'm going to hold it up to the line on the left to load it, and I'm going to press the load button. And because I'm doing this backwards, it had a little bit of a catch. So I'm simply going to load that again to make sure that it's going to load correctly and straight. And then your machine, because we've told it in the software we're cutting with a cutting mat, it's going to load it the exact distance. Now, this is another place to note. If you are using third-party mats, which I do not recommend, especially on a brand new machine, because it can void your warranty. If you're using a third-party cutting mat, that is going to be a different page margin area. And I'll link in the description below a video that covers that very, very specifically, and I show you exactly what I mean with examples. So now that I have this set up, let's pop back over to the software. Let's click send. It's going to ask me that I have everything set up. I do. 1 and 2 is good to go. I'm going to click send and grab my weeding tool. Now, many have asked about the sound. So when I go to send this job, I'm going to move my microphone a little bit closer. What you could hear there was the sound of the machine from my microphone here. So when I do the next cut, I will hold my microphone a little bit closer. I'm going to press the unload button. Then I'm going to check this to see how it cut. And the center cut out. You want to be careful weeding this. It cut. It's just my HTV. I tore it as I was bringing it out. So it did cut. And I'm going to go ahead and load that again. And then jump back over to the software. So my test cut is done. I can uncheck blue. I'm going to check red, make sure that red is this color in the bottom. Double check my settings, and since it cut, I'm going to click on send. It's going to ask me that everything's loaded. Then I'm going to pop back over to the machine and hold my microphone down for you. Okay, so it cut. I hope you could hear the sounds of it. It's going to be a little bit different on a microphone, or your space is going to affect how it cuts, or the surface you have on here. But what I can tell you is that it does not have the same screeching sound as the Cameo 4. The loudest part of that entire process was the blade tapping to adjust. So I'm going to go ahead and unload this. And then I'm going to grab this protective sheet, and I'm going to flip my mat over, and I'm going to carefully peel the mat away from the material. And then I'm going to cover my protective sheet again. That isn't a great, I'm going to redo that in a minute. It does have a different sound to it. I'm going to guess at the moment, it's a guesstimate because we do not have the tools available when I record this, but the new powered tool housing has power to it. So I'm going to guess that that's going to be a little bit of the noise. And most people probably can't hear it. I have very sensitive hearing, so I can typically hear that, but it's not a whine. It's not an alien sound. It's not a robot sound. The sound from the housing, it is a newly designed housing, and it is also a newly designed way that it travels with the belt system. You don't see the same belt system as you did on the older models. So I'm looking at it backwards. That's a hard thing to do. But it didn't have that same sound and the screeching as the Cameo 4. So let's take a look at this. Whoops, that one almost went flying. We'll weed this really quick. And guess what? It cut. I just need to be a little bit careful when I weed the design, and that's okay. I probably could have used a little bit higher force on the material, and that's going to happen. You're going to learn as you go. It did cut. AutoBlade worked. Everything worked well. And I just have to weed this design carefully. So I will show a photo of that because you don't need to watch me weed on the camera. So let's take a look at that. So I gave up on that piece. I cut a new piece and I did my test cuts again. I'm sending this again with a little bit higher force. It was brand new blade, brand new machine out of the box. And it's just going to happen to you as well, no matter if it's brand new or not. I'm watching my machine to make sure it's working properly. I got a great test cut, so I sent the entire design, and this time it turned out great. I was able to weed that. You're kind of seeing up behind the scenes here as I was setting up for another shot. It's going to happen to you. Videos, 100%. It doesn't work perfect the first time, all the time for everybody. Even experienced users have issues. So here I'm showing I did get a complete cut, and here's a little bit of a close-up of the finished cut with that success, and I just scrapped the other one. So I am excited to test out this new Cameo 5 and see what it can do. Make sure to check the description below for more information. I'll have some new YouTube videos up as I get those tested and see what we can do. I also have Silhouette classes available. You can check out those in the description below. And thanks for joining me. I hope you have a great day. Have fun playing with your new machine. Just test it. Push buttons, take some scrap materials, see what you can do with it. Have a great day.